Before we talk about what's broken, I need you to understand why it matters. The economy, justice, politics, they're not just systems, they're the roots of every struggle we live with. But here's the part nobody tells you. The system only works because we do. We build it, we fund it, we maintain it, which means we can unbuild it too. This is From Dirt We Grow. This is Stephanie Kendall. This is a very deep, meaningful episode we're about to have here, and I would love for you to stick around. It is going to be very informative, and please share it. So, we're going to get right into it. Every broken system in this country, from healthcare to education to law enforcement, can be tracked back to these three rotted roots: economy, justice, and of course, politics. Now, these aren't separate failures, they feed off of each other. Greed funds control, control protects greed, and politics wraps it all up in propaganda. Together, they've built an America where inequality isn't a glitch in the system, it is the system. So, today we're going to be digging deep because if we ever want to rebuild, we have to understand what broke us in the first place. Welcome to From Dirt We Grow. Let's dig. So, let's start with the economy, the foundation. And this is an economy built on extraction, not equity. From slavery to cheap labor to debt dependency. The names may have changed, but the game never did. And that the goal never changed. It always kept the same, which was to keep the wealth concentrated at the top. Slavery didn't just shape our economy, it defined it. It was the engine that drove agriculture, trade, and early manufacturing, built off the backs of people who were seen as property, not human beings. Even after abolition, that mentality didn't die. It just evolved into the systems that still exploit, still manipulate, and still divide. Inequality isn't just a moral issue. Harvard Business Review even says it's an economic one. It slows economic growth, deepens recessions, and keeps people trapped. And the truth is, the reason so many of us feel like we're drowning, constantly hustling, constantly broke, isn't by accident. Because a population too tired, too stressed to question the system is a population easy to control. So stick with me. We're not just pointing fingers here today. We're tracing the infection back to its source. Because once you understand where the rot started, you can finally figure out how to rebuild something real, something that actually serves the people. You see, when we talk about the economy, we like to imagine it's this big neutral machine: stocks, trade, taxes, all just numbers on a screen. But here's the truth they don't teach you in school: America's economy didn't start with innovation or entrepreneurship, it started with exploitation. From the moment the first ships hit the shore, our economic foundation was laid with human lives as currency. Enslaved Africans didn't just work the fields, they built the fields, the ports, the industries that made this country rich. Cotton, sugar, tobacco, the cash crops that fueled America's rise and Europe's wealth all flowed from one source: stolen labor. SocialStudiesHelp.com lays it all out for us, even tracing the economic role of slavery back to ancient times, such as Rome and the medieval era. It tells us that the onset of the transatlantic slave trade was what established slavery as a predominant economic engine. It states that the European colonizers saw the untapped resources from the New World and saw African slaves as reliable and accessible. So they uprooted these African natives from their lives and homeland, forced them into a human trade ring, and vastly profited off of their labor. Hence, slavery being directly involved in fueling industrial growth and economic circulation. Moral of the story being that these European migrants, white men, amassed their wealth off of the labors and manipulations of black men and created within them a skewed attitude towards labor and values that carried on with them long after slavery was abolished. Now, the end of slavery did not change the ramifications of it, and it certainly did not change many people's views of black folks or the way they treated them. And that mindset, that wealth is something to be extracted and not shared, became part of America's DNA. Sharecropping, prison labor, redlining, predatory loans. We're taught to believe hard work equals success, but that equation was never built for everyone. Because when the game is rigged, Effort alone cannot change the outcome. So, if we're going to talk about fixing the economy, we have to be real about what it was built to do, not to serve people, but to use them. And that's why this conversation matters. Because understanding how we got here isn't about guilt, it's about clarity. You can't rebuild a foundation you won't admit is cracked. So, when slavery ended, the story didn't stop. It just changed its name. The chains may have come off, but the system kept its grip. Sharecropping replaced the whip with contracts, still trapping black families on the same land they once worked for free. They'd borrow tools, rent soil, and somehow at the end of every season, they still owed more than they earned. And that was the birth of America's favorite weapon, debt. It's the modern shackle, invisible, legal, and lifelong. Fast forward a century, and that cycle of control just found new disguises: credit cards, student loans, payday lenders, and a wage system that pays just enough to survive, never enough to break free. The plantation became the paycheck, the overseer became the boss, and the slave quarters became the neighborhoods redlined and underfunded for generations. Meanwhile, the wealth at the top, built on centuries of exploitation, compounds and compounds, while the rest of us are told to work harder, save smarter, and be patient. But patience doesn't fix a system designed for imbalance. We've been told that debt is a sign of poor decisions, but really, it's a sign of a poor design. Because if everyone's in debt, that means it's not just personal, it's systemic. That is why so many Americans feel like they're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. Because the economy doesn't need us to thrive, it just needs us to keep running. So, next, we're going to talk about how that same greed infected our justice system, because you can't have mass incarceration without mass manipulation. When slavery ended, control didn't die, and the system found a brand new loophole: the 13th Amendment. Quote, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, unquote. There it is, the fine print that made freedom conditional, the loophole that turned freedom into privilege and punishment into profit. After emancipation, black men were arrested for anything: vagrancy, loitering, talking back. They were funneled right back into forced labor under convict leasing, building railroads, mining coal, paving roads. The slave trade became the state trade. Fast forward, and that same mindset evolved again. Today we call it mass incarceration, a $1 billion business disguised as justice. Private prisons collect checks for every occupied bed. Companies profit off prison labor that pays cents on the dollar. Politicians get campaign donations to keep the laws tough. Everyone eats, except the people being eaten alive. Think about it. America locks up more of its own citizens than any other country on earth, and yet we still call ourselves the land of the free. But freedom isn't in America isn't free. It's franchised. If you have money, you can buy it. If you don't, you can lose it over a traffic ticket, a missed payment, or being born in the wrong zip code. And the media keeps the lie alive, painting poverty as crime and crime as color. It's all part of the same loop. Poverty feeds the system feeds the prisons, and the prisons feed profits. That's not justice, that's business. And just like the economy, this one thrives on fear, because fear keeps people compliant. When you're scared of the system, you won't challenge it. When you're scared of your neighbor, you won't unite with them. That's why they keep us divided by race, by class, by party, because the moment we realize we're fighting the same fight, the whole structure shakes. And now we'll look at how that truth takes us to the top, the third root of the rot: politics. The puppet master that funds the greed, protects the corruption, and markets it as democracy. Please stick with me, because once we hit that root, the whole picture becomes crystal clear: that the system isn't broken, it's built this way. But if it was built, that means it can be rebuilt by us. See, where the economy extracts and the justice system enforces, politics makes it all look legitimate. It sells control wrapped in red, white, and blue. They call it democracy, but too often it's just a marketing campaign for the elite. Every election season, they feed us slogans about hope, change, unity, then turn around and cash checks from the same corporations funding both sides. Lobbyists write the laws, politicians sell the speeches, and we, the people, foot the bill. They keep us arguing over colors, red versus blue, black versus white and brown, while while the real game plays out in green. And as long as we're distracted by division, nobody's watching the deals being made in the dark. Because outrage is profitable, division is powerful, and apathy, that's their biggest win. So they feed us just enough hope to keep us voting, but not enough truth to make us powerful. The system thrives because we believe it's unchangeable. But here's the truth they fear most: the system only works because we work. We build it, we fund it, we maintain it, which means we can unbuild it too. This isn't about burning it down, it's about rebuilding it right, about replacing greed with accountability, replacing propaganda with transparency, and replacing party loyalty with people loyalty. If we want justice, the economy has to change. If we want an honest economy, politics has to change. And if we want any of it to change, we have to change together. That's why this show exists. Not to shame or divide, but to unite. To call it what it is, learn what it was, and rebuild what it could be. So when we say from dirt we grow, we're not just talking about where we came from. We're talking about what we can become. Because the soil might be tainted, but it's still fertile. And it's far time we plant something better. This is From Dirt We Grow. Don't just wake up angry, wake up aware. See you next week.